Welcome to 7 Days Report, your reliable source of information from all major news from around the world. I'm your host, Vasilios Nikolaos Vitsilogiannis, and I'm happy to have you here with us this evening. Every weekend at 12 p.m. and 9 p.m., we bring you the latest headlines, in-depth analysis, and insightful commentary on the stories that matter most. Whether you're tuning in for a recap of the week or looking for a deeper understanding of global events, we've got you covered. Let's start with our first news. The European Union has narrowly avoided an immediate escalation in its trade dispute with the United States, but the path to a lasting deal that satisfies President Donald Trump remains fraught with uncertainty. Over the weekend, Trump agreed to postpone his threatened 50% tariffs on EU imports, originally set to take effect June 1st, after a productive call with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The new deadline for a breakthrough is July 9th, giving negotiators less than 6 weeks to bridge a wide gulf in expectations. Trump's move came after weeks of mounting frustration in Washington over what U.S. officials describe as the EU's slow pace and bureaucratic approach to trade talks. The president has repeatedly criticized the bloc's regulatory barriers, taxes, and what he sees as unfair treatment of American companies, particularly in the automotive and agricultural sectors. Trump's economic advisors have pressed for sweeping concessions, including greater EU purchases of U.S. soybeans, liquefied natural gas, military equipment, and hormone-free beef, demands that echo provisions in Britain's recent trade agreement with Washington. For its part, the EU continues to push for a mutually beneficial deal that would see both sides eliminate tariffs on industrial goods. However, European officials have shown little appetite for what they view as one-sided concessions. Trade between the EU and the U.S. is unparalleled and should be governed by mutual respect, not threats, said EU Trade Commissioner Maros Šefčovič, emphasizing the bloc's readiness to defend its interests. With the U.S. already imposing 25% tariffs on EU steel, aluminum, and vehicles, and a 10% levy on most other goods, the stakes are high. Failure to reach a deal by July 9th could trigger a new wave of tariffs, raising prices for consumers and threatening economic growth on both sides of the Atlantic. For now, the reprieve offers a brief window for diplomacy, but little clarity on whether compromise is within reach. Russia has dramatically escalated its aerial campaign against Ukraine, unleashing record waves of drone and missile attacks on cities and civilian infrastructure in what analysts describe as a calculated effort to terrorize the population and give the appearance of military dominance. Over the past several days, Ukraine has endured its largest air assaults since the full-scale invasion began in 2022. According to Ukrainian officials, Russia launched nearly 370 missiles and drones in a single night, killing at least 12 people and injuring many more. The Ukrainian Air Force reported that 355 Shahed-type attack drones and 9 cruise missiles were deployed in one of the most extensive barrages to date, targeting multiple regions including the capital, Kyiv. Civilians, including children, have been among the casualties, and residential neighborhoods, businesses, and critical infrastructure have suffered extensive damage. Experts and human rights organizations argue that these attacks are part of a deliberate strategy by Moscow to inflict maximum hardship on Ukrainian civilians, undermine morale, and force mass displacement. The escalation comes as diplomatic efforts to broker a ceasefire have faltered, with Russian President Vladimir Putin showing little willingness to compromise. The United Nations and independent monitors have documented a sharp rise in civilian casualties, with aerial strikes increasingly targeting homes, schools, hospitals, and energy facilities. In April alone, UN officials verified a 46% increase in civilian casualties from Russian bombardments compared to the previous year. While the Kremlin insists its strikes are aimed at military targets, the pattern of attacks, often hitting densely populated areas during peak hours, suggests an intent to maximize civilian suffering and project an image of strength both domestically and internationally. As one Ukrainian activist put it, Russia's policy is absolutely full-scale terrorism. They want to make us feel unsafe and powerless. With millions displaced and vital infrastructure in ruins, experts warn that Russia's aerial terror campaign is not only a humanitarian catastrophe, but also a cynical attempt to shift perceptions of the war's momentum in Moscow's favor. European Union has sharply criticized Israel's ongoing military operations in Gaza, with its top diplomat declaring that recent strikes have gone beyond what is necessary to combat Hamas, as civilian casualties and destruction of infrastructure continue to mount. Kaja Kallas, the EU's High Representative for Foreign Affairs, stated on Wednesday that Israeli attacks in Gaza exceed what is necessary to combat Hamas, highlighting the rising death toll and the extensive damage to civilian sites. According to Gaza's health ministry, nearly 4,000 people have been killed since hostilities resumed in March following a brief ceasefire. Kallas emphasized that the EU does not support new aid distribution models proposed by Israel and the United States that bypass the United Nations, insisting that humanitarian assistance cannot be used as a weapon and must remain impartial. The EU's condemnation comes amid growing international outrage. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described the strikes on civilian infrastructure, including a school sheltering displaced families, as abhorrent and disproportionate, stressing that such actions cannot be justified under humanitarian and international law. Von der Leyen reiterated the EU's support for Israel's right to self-defense, but warned that the escalation and the impact on civilians have crossed acceptable limits. The EU, one of the largest providers of humanitarian aid to Gaza, has also criticized Israel's blockade, which has severely restricted the flow of essential supplies. Kallas called for the immediate and unimpeded resumption of aid, underscoring the intolerable plight of Gaza's 2.1 million residents. With pressure mounting, the EU has initiated a formal review of its trade agreement with Israel and is set to discuss possible measures at the upcoming foreign ministers' meeting in Brussels. The bloc's leaders continue to call for a return to ceasefire negotiations and a lasting peace based on a two-state solution. Elon Musk, the billionaire entrepreneur and CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, announced Wednesday that he is stepping down from his role as a special government employee in the Trump administration, concluding a high-profile and often contentious tenure at the helm of the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. Musk's departure comes just one day after he publicly criticized President Donald Trump's signature legislative package, a sweeping bill combining tax cuts and immigration enforcement measures. Musk described the legislation as a massive spending bill that he argued would undermine the work of DOGE, the agency Trump created to slash federal waste. "I think a bill can be big or it could be beautiful, but I don't know if it could be both," Musk said in a CBS interview. Appointed shortly after Trump's inauguration, Musk was granted special authority to lead DOGE, which was tasked with dramatically reducing government spending and bureaucracy. Over his roughly 5-month tenure, Musk oversaw significant cuts to the federal workforce, reportedly eliminating up to 12% of civilian employees, and pushed for the dismantling of several agencies. However, his aggressive cost-cutting measures faced mounting political resistance and legal challenges, forcing Musk to scale back his original spending reduction targets from $2 trillion to $150 billion. In a statement posted on X, Musk thanked Trump for the opportunity and expressed hope that the DOGE mission would only strengthen over time as it becomes a way of life throughout the government. White House officials confirmed Musk's exit, noting that his 130-day appointment as a special government employee was always intended to be temporary. Musk is expected to refocus on his business ventures, including Tesla, SpaceX, and X, as DOGE's remaining staff continue their efficiency drive within federal agencies. Chinese students aspiring to study in the United States are facing mounting anxiety and uncertainty as Washington intensifies its crackdown on student visas, particularly for those from China. The latest move, announced this week by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, involves the aggressive revocation of existing visas and a suspension of new student visa appointments, pending expanded social media vetting for applicants. For Laney, a 24-year-old postgraduate in Beijing, accepted to a PhD program at the University of California, the situation is especially distressing. "We feel powerless and unable to act," she said, describing the process as a waiting game with no clear end in sight. Many students like Laney are caught in limbo, unsure if they will be able to begin their studies in the fall or if they should seek alternatives abroad. The new policy specifically targets students in critical fields and those with perceived connections to the Chinese Communist Party, though officials have not clarified how many will be affected. With approximately 277,000 Chinese students currently enrolled in U.S. institutions, making up about a quarter of all international students, the impact could be substantial. Universities and tech companies in the U.S. also stand to lose. Chinese students are a major source of tuition revenue and talent, especially in STEM fields where they represent 16% of graduate students. The uncertainty has prompted some students to consider deferring their studies or looking to universities in other countries, such as the UK. China's foreign ministry has condemned the measures as discriminatory and politically motivated, warning that they undermine the U.S.'s reputation for openness. As the new academic year approaches, thousands of Chinese students remain in limbo, anxiously awaiting clarity on their future in American higher education. As we wrap up another edition of the 7 Days Report, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks for joining me this evening. We've covered a wide array of significant global events, and I hope you found our news insightful and engaging. Remember, you can catch us every weekend at 12 p.m. and 9 p.m. for your weekly major news from around the world. Stay tuned for our next meeting, where we'll dive deeper into the stories shaping our world. Until then, take care and keep informed. This is Vasilios Nikolaos Vitsilogiannis signing off. Goodbye.